So, welcome everyone to the Planning Committee meeting. I'm Liz Schell, Chair of Planning Committee. We have with us our committee members, Councillor Osanek, Councillor Neal, who is Vice Chair, Councillor McLaren, and Councillor Turner. And we have a number of city staff with us this evening, starting with our Director Page. We have City Solicitor Ray. We have Planner Lambert, Manager Vendetti, Planner Sands, and Planner Diedrichson, and our clerk is James Thompson. So welcome everyone. And we do have a couple of public meetings this evening, so I'll read the normal public meeting introduction to everyone. Notice of collection. Personal information collected as a result of this public hearing and on the forms provided at the back of the room is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making a decision on this matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments may be collected and may form part of the minutes which will be available to the public. Questions regarding this collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning, Building, and Licensing Services. The purpose of public meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations by the applicant, committee members will be afforded an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be opened to the public for comments and questions. Interested persons are requested to give their name and address for recording in the minutes. There is also a sign-in sheet for interested members of the public at the back of the room. No decisions are made at public meetings concerning applications unless otherwise noted. The public meeting is held to gather public opinion. Exemption to this rule is outlined in bylaw number 2006-75 to delegate various planning approvals to staff and to adopt certain procedures for the processing of planning applications subject to delegated authority. Council has authorized staff to use this discretion in determining if an application can be a combined public meeting comprehensive report to expedite the approval process, and during tonight's meeting, consideration will be given to a combined public meeting comprehensive report regarding 70 Montreal Street. Public meetings are provided to inform the public of all relevant information. Information gathered is then referred back to Planning, Building, and Licensing Services staff for the preparation of a comprehensive report and recommendation to Planning Committee. This means that after the meeting tonight, staff will be considering the comments made by the public in their further review of the applications. When this review is completed, a report will be prepared making a recommendation for action to this committee. The recommendation is typically to approve with conditions or to deny. This committee then makes a recommendation on the applications to City Council, and City Council has the final say on the applications from the city's perspective. Following council decision, notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act, and anyone with an interest in the matter may file an appeal. Interested persons are advised that if a person or a public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council to the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Thank you. And with that, I will open our first public meeting of this evening. Many of us were here in 2013 for a public meeting on this application, and I'm glad that we can all get back together to find out what's changed, since there have been significant changes, and we can all have comments. So this has to do with application for zoning bylaw amendment and draft plan of subdivision 655 Graceland Avenue, and our planners are here and will be presenting, or the applicants are here. If you'd like to come to the microphone, please.
My name is Heather Riley, and I'm the senior planner with Ainley Group in Belleville. Nancy Dion's with me. She's a professional engineer, and she's the project engineer. Since I'm doing this from paper remarks, Madam Chair, may I sit here?
Yes, if you'd like, and just turn on the microphone.
Okay.
There's a small button.
I'm on?
Yep.
Thanks.
I'll just start out by saying that I was the planner who was here in 2013 for the public meeting, and we had a lot of comments at that time. I've read all the comments that have come in since that meeting, and so I want to spend some time tonight addressing the comments that have come in both at the first meeting and since then, because the comments are important to us. First thing I'd like to do is provide a bit of history for the site and what we've done to try to promote good development on those lands. The site has been planned for development for at least 40 years. The existing development zoning was put on the lands in 1976, back in the days when the lands were in Kingston Township. The east half of the lands that I refer to as Graceland are part of a subdivision plan originally proposed by Bay Hill Corporation almost 30 years ago in the 1990s. That land included lands east of what is now Bay Ridge Drive, which have already been developed. And then Bay Ridge Drive was built, finalized, and the west side, the Graceland lands, were never developed. I suspect because of the economic downturn in the mid-1990s. In any case, the Graceland lands were, in part, within that subdivision plan.
Can I just get you to speak closer to the mic?
Oh, okay. Before that, the site was a working strawberry farm with buildings that were subsequently used as residential units, and these were demolished a few years ago. The Graceland site is not now and never has been planned or designated or zoned as an area of environmental protection. It's never been publicly owned open space or green space. It's not part of a green belt. It's not city parkland. It is not a conservation area or owned by the Conservation Authority. The Graceland site has always been largely vacant, privately owned land. We submitted an application for residential development in September 2013. Our initial proposal was for 53 lots. This represented a density of development that was lower than the maximum density permitted by the city for the site. We've reduced that proposed number to 45 lots in a revised plan. The revised plan represents development at a density that's now substantially under what is permitted by the city. It provides for additional parkland to meet the city's requirements. It establishes lots that all meet the minimum lot area required by the R1 residential zone. No second units are planned. That is, no basement units, no additional units, which the province is encouraging. No second units are planned within the homes. The proposed zoning will not permit. When the proposed zoning is in place, it won't permit second units. Homes are intended to be compatible in appearance with the existing neighborhood. We've provided many technical studies and reports to the city in order to address all of the city's concerns and requirements. These include a noise assessment to address noise impact from CN Rail and the airport, a stormwater management report to ensure safe storm runoff, a soils report to review the condition of the site soils, a servicing report to demonstrate that the water and sewer pipes in the area, along with the city's overall water and sewer systems, can support what is proposed, and a geotechnical report to ensure that soils are able to support internal roads and dwelling foundations. We've submitted a tree inventory and preservation plan completed by a certified arborist to ensure that tree cover is maintained and enhanced on the site to meet the city's requirements, and plans for landscaping the internal roads and the stormwater management block that were prepared by a landscape architect. We've provided copies of the provincial sign-off letters regarding archaeological investigation of the site that had been completed previously. I said that comments from the public are important to us. I heard those comments from the public meeting in 2013 and spent time after that meeting to make sure that I had a chance that night to speak to as many people as wanted to speak to me. I've reviewed all the public comments that have come in since that meeting, and I feel that these comments coalesce around a few areas of concern that I'd like to spend a few minutes addressing. So regarding the trees and other environmental concerns, preparation of the tree inventory and preservation plan involved a certified arborist tagging, identifying, surveying locations, and assessing the condition of each of the 792 trees on the site. The report indicates that there are 27 trees that are diseased and dangerous or on a road allowance and need to be removed. These will be replaced with even more trees than are removed. There's a replacement ratio from the city that we have to meet, and we want to, and of course will, meet the city requirement for replacement trees. The tree preservation plan also provides measures to protect healthy trees during construction. The developer's objective is to preserve and enhance the tree cover on the site, as trees contribute to a healthy and attractive development, which is good for everybody. The city requires this, we want to do this. Early in this process, Cataraqui Region Conservation Authority confirmed that this site does not qualify for or require environmental protection. It informed the city in 2012, at the time of its initial review of the development, that no environmental impact study was required. At that time, it reviewed the proposed plan of subdivision and the stormwater management plan. It stated that the main interests of the CRCA in this application are the preservation of woodlands and the provision of adequate stormwater management and sedimentation and erosion controls. In additional comments in 2013, the CRCA stated that it is supportive of the tree preservation plan and believes that the proposed subdivision layout is conducive to the retention of many of the mature healthy tree species, especially those located along the southern property line adjacent to the CN rail line. It also stated that subject to final stormwater management reports, grading details, and a final tree preservation plan, which can only be done when dwellings are sited on each of the lots, it had no further concerns regarding stormwater management for the site. We have provided parkland of a size and location that meets the requirements of the city. It's located next to and will connect to the existing parkland and therefore enlarge the existing park. This will increase the amount of public green space in the area. The frontage of this block on the proposed public road will provide a second access to the enlarged park. You can see that large block on the plan in the northwest, the top upper left corner of the plan, just to the left of the curve in the top road there. So the frontage of this block provides a second point at which people can get into this newly enlarged park. Whatever happens in that park, how it's developed, playground equipment, a sports field, whatever, though, is up to the decision of the city. They'll do the planning for the park. Regarding the deer that visit the site, there were a lot of comments in 2013 about the deer that frequent the Graceland site. We submitted a report after that meeting from a local environmental consultant. The biologist assessed potential impacts of the development on the site's natural heritage value, specifically looking at the deer that appear on the site. Her report noted that, and I'll quote here from it, "White-tailed deer is a common species. In fact, it is the most common and widely distributed of all North American large mammals. They are not a species at risk. No deer yard has been documented on or near the site. This property does not have appropriate vegetation to fulfill the requirements of overwintering deer. These deer require a corridor of at least 200 meters wide with any gaps less than 20 meters wide, and that is unbroken by roads and residential areas. This site does not have sufficient area to support a deer congregation in the area. This property cannot be considered to provide significant wildlife habitat." The end of her quote. Cataraqui Region Conservation Authority reviewed and accepted that report. In conversation with the biologist who prepared the report, she reminded me of the danger presented by deer crossing a traveled road, especially at dusk. Bath Road is a 4-lane arterial road. According to local residents at the first public meeting, they believe the deer originate in the LaPointe Point area south of Bath Road. If so, these deer are crossing Bath Road to get to the Graceland site. I suggest that in the interest of the safety of motorists and CN rail trains as well, it is not a good idea to have deer running from south of Bath Road across Bath Road to the Graceland site on the north side. Regarding the proposed internal road and an increase in traffic, any efficient use of the site requires an internal road. We propose a road through our site to link two existing roads to permit the necessary access to the new lots. This means a road between the east end of Forest Hill Drive and Graceland Avenue. Names approved by the city are Forest Hill Drive, which would be a continuation east of the current Forest Hill Drive, Graceland Avenue, which would be a continuation, this would be the road, north-south road coming out of the subdivision, and Westbourne Court would be the name of the cul-de-sac. I know from other comments to the city that there are concerns about the potential increase in traffic on Forest Hill Drive. I don't deny there will be additional cars in the neighborhood. However, using Forest Hill Drive is not an efficient way for anyone to get around the area. Why would anyone in the area loop down across Forest Hill Drive from, say, Lincoln, and then north again on Graceland to get to Bay Ridge? People on Lincoln are probably headed for Bay Ridge unless they're visiting someone very local in the subdivision on Forest Hill Drive or in the new area. Any overall traffic increase will come from the proposed lots only and not from through traffic. The most efficient route out of the new subdivision is to go directly north up Graceland Avenue to Lincoln. Most new residents will drive straight out of the development and continue to Bay Ridge Drive or onto Taylor Kidd Boulevard. It's just the common sense choice. The alternative to a connecting road from the east end of Forest Hill Drive through the new subdivision is to create a dead end at the east end of Forest Hill Drive and then loop the proposed internal road within the Graceland site with no access to Forest Hill Drive. However, I don't think there's a proper cul-de-sac at the end of Forest Hill Drive right now because the connector road was always intended, has always been planned to go through those vacant lands and do exactly what we're proposing, to loop those two streets, Forest Hill Drive and Graceland Avenue. So it makes sense to enable traffic flow rather than stoppage and backup in a cul-de-sac in that area. There are other benefits to an extension of Forest Hill Drive. I was interested to read in one of the comments from an area resident that she's supportive of our proposed connector road because it will, as she says, provide comfort to know that there is more than one route for emergency services on Forest Hill Drive. According to this resident, there have been times when the one entrance to Forest Hill Drive has been impassable with severe storms or fallen trees. This resident sees the proposed connector road as a good thing for public safety. Some additional benefits include probably better snow removal from Forest Hill Drive, as snow is difficult to clear out of cul-de-sacs. As well, an extension east of Forest Hill Drive will enable local residents to, access the new and enlarged park without going a longer distance north and then around to the east and south again to get into this new, the bigger park area. So as we become more conscious of livable and walkable cities, easy connections and walking routes for pedestrians are vital. Our plan provides for a fenced walkway to connect to the existing walkway between our site and Forest Hill Drive East. This walkway will encourage and assist new residents to walk to Bay Ridge Drive and to Lincoln Drive to access public transit. The city will own the walkway, but it will be landscaped at the developer's cost. Landscaping of the walkway, including the type of fencing and path treatment and so on, will be completed according to the city's plans. Regarding the CN rail line along Bath Road, some area residents have expressed concerns about the proximity of their future neighbors to the CN rail line. The subdivision has been designed to meet the requirements of CN Rail and the city. CN does a detailed review of our plans and has ongoing involvement in how the subdivision is designed in relation to its rail corridor. The closest house will be located 118 feet from the rail right-of-way and 157.5 feet from the tracks. The new homes will be located no closer to the tracks than some of the existing homes along Forest Hill Drive. This development must meet all the requirements of CN Rail, which reviews the plans carefully. For this development, CN Rail requires a combination of a berm, an acoustic fence, and a setback from the rail line to buffer the effects of noise and vibration. The slope at the rear of the new homes provides additional protection from noise and vibration. However, homes will not be required to keep rear windows closed or sealed. The new homes will be better insulated and protected from the rail line than the existing homes on Forest Hill Drive, however. An important fact for those already living along Forest Hill Drive East is that these new homes will provide additional noise buffering from the CN line. It will be quieter in your backyards when a train goes by because of these new homes. In conclusion, it's important to note that this application follows the rules. The city's report to the Planning Committee for this meeting tonight concludes that the proposal appears to meet provincial policy objectives and that it conforms to the general purpose and intent of the city's official plan. It meets city and provincial rules. The city and the province want to see our communities develop on lands that are already serviced with water and sewer, schools, and public transport in order to keep taxes down for everyone and prevent sprawl. The development meets the city's and the province's policies about where development should go and how it should occur. It meets the city's and the province's policies regarding using lands efficiently and safely. We have discussed and met with city departments and provided all the background studies and assessments that they've requested. Cataraqui Region Conservation Authority has no concerns about its development. It's been shown that the site can be developed safely and compatibly with the surrounding neighborhood. We believe that this development represents good development that will provide housing for friends yet to be met and that will complete the existing neighborhood in a compatible and beneficial way. Thank you.
Thank you. And could I hear from staff, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Staff confirm that the notice for this public meeting has been completed in accordance with the Planning Act, including signage posted at the site 20 days in advance of the public meeting. In addition, notices were mailed to all 121 property owners within 120 meters of the site. Notices were also sent to all persons who had previously provided comments on the applications and or who had requested to be notified of any future meetings on the applications. A courtesy notice was placed in the Kingston Whig Standard. In terms of comments received prior to the written notice for this public meeting, a number of pieces of correspondence have been received and included on Exhibit G to the public meeting report on this evening's agenda. After the mailing of the second public meeting notice and postage of the signage at the property, a few additional pieces of correspondence have been received and are included on the addendum for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to open it to the committee first for questions. Councillor Osanek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, thank you, Ms. Riley, for giving that overview and for the speaking notes. The residents were very involved with this application in 2013 and continue to be 4 years later in 2017. I sent about 6 questions to staff, and thanks for helping with staff with the answers to them. I just got them today. I gave a few handouts out, but more people came than I gave handouts to, so I just have to ask some of the questions again for the benefit of everyone in the room, because I don't know if all the residents heard, and that might affect the questions that they want to ask. So in terms of blasting, we have a note here from from an engineer. It's not determined yet if it will be blasting or backhoeing. Is that correct?
I think that's correct, but Nancy Dion, our engineer, can speak to that.
Yeah, correct. This works? Okay. The methods of constructions are usually determined by the contractor once subdivision is registered and ready and approved by the city and all approval agencies prior to construction. The blasting contractor is subject to following all rules and regulations of all authorities having jurisdiction in the area. That would include, obviously, the city, CN Rail in this case, and any public utility providers that are within the vicinity of the area that would be potentially proposed for blasting.
I like the details that were in the letter because I've never seen that before, and so now we know. So if it is going to be blasting, all the homes within 75 meters will be notified, and they'd be able to, like an inspection would be carried out, correct, to see if the basements have any cracks prior to the blasting, and then it could be filmed or videotaped or pictures taken after the blasting just to confirm there had been no damage. Is that how blasting is done according to the bylaws and the provincial regulations?
And that covers a small part of it. There's regulations that are set out by Ontario provincial standards, for example, and there's, about 8 pages of regulations and guidelines that a blasting contractor would need to follow. So you touched on the point of a pre-blast surveys, for example. There's vibration regulations and limitations that they need to abide to, again, depending on whose guidelines they're subject to based on the area that they're proposing to blast. So there's also, I'm not sure what you're reading. If it was a letter from an engineer, I don't think it was mine because I didn't touch on the proximity of end notifications, but yeah, there are proximity of from the areas to be blasted for people to be notified and pre-blasting surveys to be done. I think it actually exceeds the 75 meters, but I'm not, those kinds of things would need to be, there's pre-blasting design, that needs to be prepared by the blasting contractor, that needs to be reviewed. There's many rules and regulations, and the city would also have some jurisdiction over whether that's permitted within the cities.
Thank you. Regarding the parquet, that's in lot 46, correct, Ms. Riley?
I believe so. Our numbers up here are small, so block 46, I believe it is, yes.
Okay. So one of the comments sent to me is if the park can remain as natural as possible. So I know you had mentioned that it's not your control, it's the city's control if it's going to turn into soccer fields or and be, leveled and just a huge playground. And the residents that contacted me about the parquet, they would like as many trees preserved and, as much as the area left in a natural state as possible, just because it is one of the treed areas there. Another question was with regard to the tree inventory. So from the tree inventory, it looks good. So out of 792 trees, 453 will be preserved. So that's over half the trees.
Oh, more than that. There are only 27, I think, identified in the report from the arborist. 27 trees that are disease, dangerous, significant trees, I think they're called, and in the city's category, and those are the ones, the 27 trees need to be removed, largely because of disease, I believe. And then the city has a ratio. I'm not sure if it's 1 to 3 or 1 to 6, but in any case, we have to replace more than we take out. So it's a net gain through what trees are taken out, and the trees that are being taken out are, as I say, because they're diseased, they need to come out, or they're on a proposed road allowance. And for anyone who's interested in looking, there is there's mapping of all of this as part of this report. So you can go onto the DASH site and check the preservation plan and take a look at just where all the trees are, how they're categorized, with the diseased ones, where they're located. And then while the construction goes on, there is a plan, again, drawn up by the arborist as to where barriers have to be put to ensure that the trees are safe, with all the moving equipment around. So it's a fairly extensive report, and I think it's a good report too, but as you say, it's only 27 trees on there that I believe he's identified to come down.
Okay, that's great. One of the questions was about the Norwegian spruce trees. So it's my understanding that they're going to be maintained, including the hedgerows. And I can see them when I drive down Bath Road, but it's different when you actually see, where are the Norwegian spruce trees in this?
I don't know. I'd have to look at the plan
Okay.
again. Out of the 792, I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Anyway, good to hear that they're going to be preserved because that's really important to the residents.
As long
there.
as they're not amongst, I don't know. I'd have to look at the plan again to see where all of the 27 are. So that's the thing to check, is that the plan that's in the tree preservation inventory report.
The other concern.
Ms. Lambert has a little more to add.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, just for context as to where the Norway spruce are located. Page 10 of the package provides the neighborhood context map, the aerial view. There are some east-west rows of trees located on the site, as well as a north-south hedgerow that follows the property line that divides the two pieces of property that we're talking about this evening. Those are the locations where those species are generally located on the site.
Perfect, thank you. My other question then is regarding the walkway that you mentioned in your overview, and I think it's between lots 40, 48, 49. Anyway, we know where it is on Forest Hill, and we can see it there on the diagram. So, and the reason why we're putting the walkway there is just basically to create a shortcut through Forest Hill up to Bay Ridge Drive to the transit.
There's an existing walkway now, and that block that we've set aside at the city's request, and we're quite happy to do it, provides an extension of that walkway. So we've got a full path, a full walkway to go from the new development through to Forest Hill Drive East. So the existing will now have a new block added to it to create a full walkway. And this, again, it's all about getting people to walk more, to get to public transit, to try and cut down on cars, emissions, and all of that. And this helps people then get out to Bay Ridge, basically, and wherever they can pick up their public transit from there.
So the concern about the walkway has been about to ensure there's no vandalism there, that who's going to maintain it in the winter time? Like, is the city going to plow the walkway? And the
sorry.
last thing was vandalism, if it would be plowed, and litter pickup. So I just wondered, like, through staff or through you, Ms. Riley, like, because you had mentioned that there would be fencing and landscaping. I just wonder if you could explain that
Well,
more.
the block that we have will be dedicated, given to the city. The city will own it. And then the city will make plans, as they will for the park, as to how they want to see it developed. So the type of fencing and so on, that will be the city's decision. But I believe the developer will be paying for, and of course, you know, there'll be negotiations as to what's going to go there, but the developer's not going to dictate that it's a chain link fence or whatever. As I understand it, it's going to be the city, because the city will own that land, and then they will have control over how it's paved or not, how it's fenced, etc.
Through you, Madam Chair, the conveyance of the existing walkway to the city was recently completed, and as part of that dedication, the existing developer, Bay Hill, had provided monetary funds towards upgrading the walkway to a municipal standard. The proposed walkway would be developed to a municipal standard, and through the comprehensive report, staff can confer with Public Works a little further and provide details on the maintenance side of things for you.
Because according to the letter that we got from the two property owners on either side on Forest Hill, the property from the house to the walkway is only 4 feet. And I'm 5 feet with my high heels on. And so that's not a tall distance, like from, the house to where the walkway is. So if we're putting a fence, and that also houses their air conditioning units, their heating vents, to do a fence, then I don't even know if a person can squeeze through there, between the floor and here on me, and you have like some vents sticking out. I just don't see how a fence could work, but then they're worried that if there isn't a fence, then people at nighttime will come, with their magic markers, and there is vandalism in that area down at the Bay Ridge overpass, that always gets graffitied. And so I can understand their concern with that walkway.
Through you, Madam Chair, as I understand it, as far as things like air conditioners, there is a minimum setback for that type of installation from a property line. I believe it's 1.2 meters, and it provides that kind of separation to, in this case, maybe discourage that kind of activity.
Then the last question, through you, Madam Chair, is with regard to the fence. So there's a fence right now along behind the homes of Forest Hill Drive East, and there was a restrictive covenant back in the day that the fence cannot be altered or interfered with for its sound barrier capabilities. So the sound study back then was done by Coulter Engineering, and then we have a memo tonight saying that the same company has done the sound barriers for this new subdivision. And that has been a concern with the residents on Forest Hill, because here we have a restrictive covenant from Coulter, like it's signed by Coulter Engineering, saying that, you know, as required by the Ministry of the Environment, the acoustic fence along the rail line must be solid with no gaps, but now we're actually breaking up the fence by doing the walkway through. So they're just very concerned about the fence. Because I know that in the letter today, it's saying that the fence is actually not serving any acoustic value at this time, which contradicts what Coulter said when Forest Hill subdivision first went up.
I think Ms. Riley will have an
Thank you.
answer.
Coulter did that study for Bay Hill. We've had Coulter do updates to that study. From what I've seen of whatever fencing is along there now, it doesn't look like acoustic fencing. And we will be putting up acoustic fencing based on Coulter's updated study within our development that will then provide the acoustic protection necessary for the new subdivision and, well, the new subdivision, yes, because I mean that fence is going to be between the new subdivision and the tracks. So that fence sort of takes the place of, I guess you'd say. But I don't know, Nancy, is there anything you want to add to? I'm not sure where the existing fence is. It's right along the back of those lots, as I remember, at Forest Hill Drive East. So it'll be along, there's a fence right here and across there, and the idea of breaking that. So, but that fence, the fence I've seen along the back of those lots, I don't know that you'd say it's serving much purpose. Yeah.
It's along the backs of fences, lots number 13 to 23 on Forest Hill Drive East right now.
Yeah, so, you know, what I've seen, the fencing along the backs of the homes on Forest Hill Drive East now, that fence, for whatever, you know, it may serve as a property separator as much as anything anymore. But the new acoustic fence that's needed is placed and drawn up and spec'd according to what's necessary to provide adequate protection for the new subdivision. And of course, the new subdivision is between the tracks, the noise creator, and Forest Hill Drive East homes. There's fence along Bay Ridge as well, based on the Coulter update. So wherever Coulter, as a noise consultant, has indicated that fencing is needed, they've mapped it, they've given us the specifications as to how thick, how high, and so on. And so it will take over and provide, I would think, even better protection, given what I've seen of the existing fence along Forest Hill Drive East.
I just thought of two other questions I forgot to ask, Madam Chair, but I could let the rest of the committee ask questions.
Thanks. I know two more would like to ask some questions, and then I'll come back. Councillor Neal?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, but I'll preface them really quickly. I know that property rights means that you can indeed do site preparation in advance of getting approvals. You can do, you can begin the tree removal and that kind of thing. I know there have been some recent developments that have done so. I just would appreciate, and I'm sure the community would appreciate, to know whether you've done any initial tree removal or site preparation up till this time.
Yes, the owners are our local guys. It's Lou Vidala and Scott Elo. And I know they went in and took down the buildings that were there that were falling apart, and we're an eyesore, and I'm sure problems in other ways. I'm not sure whether Lou has gone in there and had any trees. Nancy, do you want to? Yeah, sure. Oh, yes, at the east end, yeah.
Along Bay Ridge, along the east side of the subdivision, and to the south, the city of Kingston last year, I believe, built a new water main through the subdivision. So there's been some constructing activity that somebody would have definitely seen that was happening there, done by the city.
That's understandable, as would be the removal of those diseased or risky trees. I guess I receive phone calls from other developers who do all of their site preparation prior to gaining approval through a comprehensive report. And I know that's their right. I just want to point out that on behalf of a good neighbor policy, you might want to suggest that that the approval happens before the bulk of the site preparation and tree removal happens. So even though it is, I recognize a right of the property owner.
Yeah, certainly, Lou Vidal, he hasn't talked with me about doing anything yet about any of that. I don't know whether he's talked to you, Nancy, about any grubbing on the site?
No, not personally. However, just as a standard development process, there are developers that will begin site construction in advance of the actual construction around the time of registration of the plan of subdivision, which happens after the draft plan approval.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Councillor McLaren?
Thank you. One of the big concerns I always have with subdivisions is their fiscal sustainability and fiscal prudency. So I'm wondering if this is the optimal design on a long-term basis. So I know that the provincial policy statement in section 4 and its vision for the Ontario land use planning talks about the efficient development patterns that support the financial well-being of the province and the municipality over the long term and minimize undesirable effects of development. I'm wondering if, for example, fiscally, do the taxes that you expect to be collected from this cover the capital and operating costs over the lifetime of this thing? So for example, the rebuilding of the roads, the lighting of the streets, the plowing, the painting, the trimming of the trees, all of that kind of stuff? Do you have any idea?
Well, I think the city must know whether their taxes are set at a level such that would answer your question in the affirmative. I mean, once the roads are constructed and have gone through a maintenance period and the city's ready to accept them into ownership, then they become the city's property. And the park and the block for the walkway. So I'm assuming that's out of our hands in terms of those determinations.
Mm-hmm. So it hasn't been analyzed in terms of fiscal sustainability over the long term from the city's perspective?
We haven't done that. It's not something that gets done at this point. Maybe the city has some response to that. I don't know.
Anytime soon?
Yeah. Thanks, Paige.
Thank you, and through you. So as you know, based on the motion that was brought forth to council, we are undertaking that work now. It's complex work that we're doing from an economic costing and modeling perspective, but that is work that's underway right now.
May I ask any time when it might be done soon, when we can start seeing the results of that on applications?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So the intention of that piece is to work on having an overall financial costing and modeling perspective as it relates to different forms of development. So looking at different forms of residential development, commercial development, institutional development, and then looking at that from a cost recovery perspective as it relates to increased tax assessment and growth and how that feeds into our overall capital plans for the community. It's not the intention to use that on a application by application basis in terms of our analysis, but to use it to drive overall policy development for the city. In terms of the timing, at this point, we've just started to undertake that process, so it's going to take 2 or 3 months to pull all of the detailed information together that looks at the city's overall capital plans and costing associated with different types of replacements, the life cycle of different types of pieces of infrastructure. But it's our intention to work over the next couple of months, to do some consultation likely over the summer, and then have something to bring forward back to this committee in early fall of 2017.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you. And I'll see if Councillor Osanek wants to go and then recognize you again, Mr. Neal.
Great. One of the questions was also behind, like the fence that's behind the homes on Forest Hill Drive East, so lots number 13 to 23, they have that fence, even though we just heard that it's not an acoustic fence right now, right? But for that fence, the homes in your subdivision will be backing onto that fence, correct? So how will they'll be sharing the fence, or will you be building a new fence adjacent to that fence in the backyard of those homes on the north side?
We don't have any plan to build another fence there, but as individual homeowners buy lots, and they'll have to comply with city requirements, but some of them, perhaps all of them, may choose to build fences in addition to the existing ones. I don't know, but certainly we have no plans to put up a fence along there.
Okay, and one of the residents sent me, it's a Federation of Canadian Municipalities document on building homes next to railway tracks in light of the railway accidents that have occurred over the last few years. This report was from 2013. It's called Guidelines for New Development in Proximity to Railway Operations. And so when she sent me the report, it's recommending, like from railway tracks, how high a berm should be and what the setback should be from backyards of homes. So for the development right now, for the homes on the south side of the new road, how high is the berm going to be, and what is the setback in the backyard from the railway tracks to the acoustic fence that's going to be built?
I can tell you that the city and zoning will implement a 30-meter setback from the rail right-of-way. I'll ask Nancy to speak to this, but I will say as well that as recently as, a month ago or less, we're in contact with CN Rail. We're doing what they ask us to do. They set the requirements along with the city in terms of where these homes can go, what needs to be installed in terms of protection. But as to the specifics of the berm, Nancy, can you tell us anything?
Yeah. Trying to remember.
No, I think you were.
Oh.
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, we've done some preliminary grading design, much more than we in fact usually do for developments at this stage, for the purpose of satisfying many different authorities that are reviewing this. So in terms of the safety height, or the minimum 2.5 meter high berm that CN Rail requires, we exceed that in some cases by 5 meters. So we're almost 8 meters higher than the berm in some cases, but we exceed the minimum in all cases. And in terms of setback, there's a 30-meter minimum, and we exceed that in all cases by about 5 meters more than that, at minimum.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mine was the shortest of process questions for Ms. Page, if I might. Will that report, upon its completion, come through planning, or will it go directly to council?
Thank you, and through you. So it's my intention to bring that particular report back through this committee, because we will be looking at doing likely a statutory public meeting so that we have the ability to take public comment on it, take that feedback into consideration. And I think given the fact that that particular motion related to land use planning came from a member of council that's on planning committee, I thought that would be the most appropriate avenue, unless there's another suggestion.
Thank you very much. I think that's the correct answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? I'd like to open the floor to members of the public, and we have, yes, if you'd like to come forward, ma'am. maybe this one or beside Ms. Ray? Yes, there we go. And if you'd like to sit beside Ms. Ray, and then you can use the desktop. And if you could give your name and address and keep it to 5 minutes, please. And at the end of all of the comments and questions, we're asking the proponents to write down all your comments and questions so that they can respond at the end to all of them. Thank you. And there's a microphone on for you.
Okay, good evening. My name is Nancy Roberts. I'm joint owner of the property at 499 Forest Hill Drive East, Lot 22, with my husband, James Roberts, whose ill health precludes his being here tonight, but who shares these views. I have seen the proposed amended plan, and I'm not impressed, I'm sorry. The total number of units has been reduced from 53 to 45. 3 of these were necessary because of the exigencies of the city's stormwater requirements. My concerns are as follows. Firstly, it's still too dense. Fewer houses would contribute to an area more in keeping with the present neighbourhood. The type of house that would be constructed along the railway tracks would not be consistent in value with existing homes for obvious reasons. Concerns about property values remain. 1/4 of the proposed development is located in close proximity to the railway tracks. Secondly, I realise that the criteria set out in the guidelines for new development in proximity to railway operations, which were prepared for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, are being met for the 12 houses on top of the tracks. But it will still be an ugly mess of berm, fence, and chain link fence, not the image of the ideal modern living space. But in addition to the lack of visual appeal, it is important to consider another aspect of this proposal. I think that in view of the number of the numerous train derailments over the past few years, it is totally incomprehensible that a planning department would approve a plan such as this, or that a city council would not reject such approval. A Reuters analysis quoted in the Financial Post 2015 stated that CN's safety record deteriorated sharply in 2012, reversing years of improvement as accidents in Canada blamed on poor track conditions hit their highest level in more than 5 years. There is a wealth of information available on the internet regarding the great number of accidents and their consequences. The guidelines which the Federation of Municipalities prepared suggest that plans for a development such as this should also identify, and I quote now, how an incident could be managed if it were to occur. Has this been done? What was the result, and where is the report? As I have already pointed out to the planning department, rescue operations would be extremely difficult with such limited access to the area. The railway houses in question are located in an awkward corner. Bay Ridge Drive is virtually inaccessible. Bath Road would be blocked by the derailed train. When I tried to talk to a member of the design team after the last meeting, citing the Lac-Mégantic antique disaster, I was told very curtly that he was not interested in Quebec as he lived in Ontario. It gives you an idea of the attitude towards the people who are living there here. He seemed to think that rescue operations could be accomplished from Bath Road, despite the fact that a train would probably be lying between Bath Road and the homes in jeopardy. I don't believe that any berm would be totally effective. At this point, the track follows a curve in the road, and the trains on the track are longer and heavier than before, comprising at times 160 to 170 cars. The flatbeds carrying containers stacked on top of each other. There is a disaster waiting to happen. Perhaps the planning department and city council should be thinking more of their civic responsibilities than the rights and profits of the developer. Who would bear the ultimate responsibility, financial and other, if there were a disaster? Thirdly, I'm aware that provincial policy dictates that infill sites should be used as far as possible for new building. However, this is not an ideal infill site. It is situated, as I have said before, in an awkward corner. The terrain is challenging. The land slopes from Forest Hill Drive east down to the level of Bath Road. There is a large rock outcrop to contend with. There would be a great deal of noise and congestion during any construction process. And actually, we were assured at the last meeting that there would be no blasting. Apparently, that's changed. We're still greatly concerned that the constant use of jackhammers will damage existing structures. And the noise for the people living there while this is going on would be intolerable. Fourthly, it appears that the developer plans a walkway to give access to Forest Hill Drive East. I have pointed out before that it will entail a breach of our acoustic fence, and whether or not you think it's still acoustic, it is part of our purchase agreement that we have this fence and that it should not be breached. The standard set by the Ministry of Environment for the fence was required to be built before the properties could be sold. And also the restrictive covenants relating to the fence, which are meant to guarantee its integrity and which were part of our purchase agreements. And that would apply to all 10 properties on Forest Hill, on the south side of Forest Hill Drive East. I don't see how another developer can summarily dismiss our rights to an unbroken fence in order to satisfy his priorities. I find this extremely strange. In this summary, this development, as now presented, will enhance the pockets of the developers, not the City of Kingston, and in doing so, diminishes the quality of life of the present taxpayers and perhaps puts the lives of future taxpayers in danger. Are there so few building lots in Kingston that it is necessary to try to fill this rather unsuitable space with all these houses? I doubt it. Thank you. I would like to hand this in.
It's a statutory public meeting. It's quasi-judicial, so I would request that there not be clapping or cheering, that sort of thing, please. And we do have a microphone on this side and this side, so would anyone else like to speak to this issue? Once I close, I will be closing, so I'd really like to hear from everyone who would like to speak, please. Yes, please. And there's just a little button on the box. There you go, you're on. Thanks.
I've spoken with a few of my local residents. Janice Nunny, 605 Forest Hill Drive. And I've spoken with a few of my neighbors, and I have 2 letters to submit to the council. One is, first, it is understood that the proposed development will be changing the current cul-de-sac configuration of Forest Hill Drive. It is understood that from a subdivision planning perspective, there are pros and cons to having a cul-de-sac versus a through street. Realtors will often highlight that cul-de-sacs are often considered to be quiet and peaceful, a safer place for children to play. I myself have small children and appreciate this setting, and that is one of the reasons why I moved to the neighborhood. It is appreciated that snow plowing could be more efficient on through streets. However, this is just one factor. It must be appreciated by the Planning Committee that the residents of Forest Hill Drive, some of which have resided here for over 20 years, and I've spoken to personally, have chose to live in this neighborhood style in part because of the cul-de-sac. We would anticipate that the new developer, or many new developers, will often see houses in a cul-de-sac setting having more desired, being more desirable than those along a through road. We have a stable neighborhood, and why should we lose the layout of our neighborhood? I propose that, in light of one of the comments by the developer, that there actually wouldn't be a lot of traffic using that extra road. We propose that it be altered to a circle configuration and turn the proposed road section of Forest Hill Drive into parkland. Alternatively, the suggested configuration of this new development will disrupt the fabric of our existing neighborhood. That was one point. The second was that the proposed subdivision layout with the circle and 7 houses sort of in the center of that, I found it did not resemble or match the layout of our existing stable community, that whole neighborhood. And it appears instead, as one of the other residents noted, that instead I think the goal was, as opposed to making a neighborhood which matches our existing neighborhood, was to just optimize the space. And yes, there was a decrease since the last submission, but not very substantial. So those are my comments, and I have letters to that effect, and I have it signed by a few different residents in the area. Thank you.
Thank you. And does the clerk have these letters?
I have them, yeah.
Okay, we'd like to
No,
get
I
them.
have them here.
Oh, okay, we'd like to make sure they're part of the public record. Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak?
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who would like to? Yes, sir. Please come to the microphone.
My name is Rainer Grather, and I live on 535 Forest Hill East. Mine will be very brief, but then it's a more selfish reason why I bring it up. There's going to be 5 houses plus one in the corner at my property. We lived there for almost 27 years. And I never had any problems with water in my basement. Now, I understand that there's lots of rules and regulation about blasting, and they will inspect it before and after. And my concern is what happens half year later, a year later, all of a sudden have water in there. Most likely they have lots of rules and regulation not to address that concern. So is there any road I can go, or what rights do I have, or what, it has happened in other subdivisions, and I'm concerned about that. I said it's selfish, but it's facts of life, and I don't want to spend any more money than I have to on my house. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Other comments? Yes, madam, if you'd like to come to the microphone. It's on.
It's okay?
Yep.
I'm Betty Adams, and Barry and I live at 598 Forest Hill Drive. It's a question. If the road goes through, what happens to the cul-de-sac? Will that be repaired by the developer and all the grass put out to the road? Because instead of a big circle, it'll just be a road through the middle. So what happens to all the excess on the sides? And how do you connect the fact that on our side we have ditches and culverts, and I presume you're going to be putting in curbs and gutters on the other side? So how does that all connect? That's my question. What happens to the road?
Great. The proponents are writing all this down, as are we,
Yeah.
and we'll make sure that that's answered
Yeah,
for you.
okay, thank you.
Any other people who would like? Yes, please come to the microphone. Thank you.
My name is Nancy Marshall. I live at 503 Forest Hill Drive East. A lot of my questions have been answered tonight, but I still feel that I'd like to express what I wrote down before the meeting started. I speak with a lot of mixed emotions tonight for obvious reasons, because the way of life on my side of the street is going to be changing forever. I have enjoyed the open green space and the wildlife in the backyard, or over the fence, I shall say, for over 25 years. And with the new proposed development, there will be a great loss of trees that contributed to the naming of the street, Forest Hill. The density of the number of proposed houses to be built will certainly change the landscape, with little regard to what once was. To strike a better balance, I respectfully ask council to consider fewer homes to be built in order to save the natural surroundings and green space. A high fence stands behind all of the homes on my side of the street, and it sends a clear message that safety was and still is a priority, as it has been maintained since it was erected by the initial developer. As a council, I ask that this covenant be upheld, that the conditions under the purchase agreement be maintained. To this, I ask council to deny the proposed walkway by the developer and to not support the developer in his attempt to breach any of the conditions of said fence. Our home is a safe distance from the railway tracks, but how close is too close for new home construction? I respectfully ask council to consider all scenarios. Given recent train derailments and lives lost, that has to be the utmost importance in your final approval to this proposed plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other people? Yes, sir? It's on.
My name's Jim Long, 606 Forest Hill West. Most of my questions have been answered tonight. I've had a problem hearing the speakers, and I just want just a short question. On the back of lots 36, 37, 38, 39, and I think it's 41 up there, I can't make it out very well. There's a tall, either they're spruce or pine, about 70 or 80 feet high, a whole row of them. And I know it was brought up tonight, my counselor brought it up, but I couldn't hear very well. How many of those trees will be cut down as the roosting? There's 10 pairs of turkey buzzards that come back at this time of year. There's only one pair that's come back, and they nest up there. Now, I don't know how many you said you were going to save along that line. I know you're going to have to cut some down because of the road, but are some of these pines going to be saved for the natural habitat, like for the turkey buzzards or what other birds that nest there? These are high pine trees. They've been there there's only about 35. They've been there for a few years. And right now, there's only one pair of turkey buzzards, but they're starting to come back. I just wondered if, I couldn't hear you very well about the arborist report and the environmental assessment, if you're going to save those trees. So that was my question.
Thank you, and we'll ask them to respond. Thank you. Are there any other members of the public wish to speak before I ask Ms. O'Reilly to start the response? Okay, once I close this portion of it, I will be closing public comment. So please, if you have anything you want the proponents to answer. Okay, I will ask Ms. Riley to respond to the many questions.
I hope I have made notes such that I can respond to everyone. So if not, please, if there's an opportunity, let me know and I'll give it another try. Mrs. Roberts, I know you mentioned a chain link fence, and I'm not sure where that we have no intention of putting a chain link fence anywhere. But that would be CN and on their right-of-way, I'm assuming, but I don't know.
I think that was in regards to the walkway.
To the walkway?
And that will be up to the city.
Is this regarding the CN lands or the walkway?
Oh, okay, CN.
In that case, I mean, we have no control over what CN feels it has to do. Personally, I wouldn't have a chain link fence anywhere, but.
We have our manager, Vendetti, can answer this.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. It's a typical requirement from CN Rail. They do dictate how their right-of-way is protected, and it's typical that they require the berm together with a chain link fence to protect their right-of-way and keep people from entering into their lands.
Let's see. In terms of emergency measures, if there's a train derailment, that again isn't something the developer plans for. That's the city's emergency measures area, whether they have a plan for something happening, I don't know. So again, I can't really respond to that concern. And then I think it was Ms. Nunny. The cul-de-sac is safer. I can understand that, not wanting to see the end of the cul-de-sac. As I mentioned, there's another option not to put a through road through there and retain your cul-de-sac, so I guess that's something that the city needs to and will think about. It's not that we have no stake, we have no hard and fast interest in either approach, I'd say. And then the gentleman over here who spoke third, who has a lot near the corner of, I believe, that same treat area, if I have that identified properly. He had a concern about water in the basement. Nancy, do you want to speak to stormwater, drainage, and grading?
I think from what I understand, his concern had to do with blasting and potentially, I forget, correct. So the method of construction is not determined at this time and is determined by the contractor, but I can say based on the geotechnical report that there is rock that would need to be excavated during construction, and typically that's done by hoe ramming or blasting if approved by all authorities having jurisdiction. So at that time, and through the plan of subdivision registration, which follows this process, those items would be addressed with the city.
And then Ms. Adams talking about what will happen with the cul-de-sac lands if the cul-de-sac is dismantled and a road is pushed through. Normally, I believe that those lands would be offered back to the abutting owners, but Nancy, more comments?
Yeah, like the lady had mentioned, the plan of subdivision would be developed to city standard with curb and gutter, and the existing Forest Hill Drive is a rural type of road with no curb and ditches and culverts and catch basins. So specifically at the end of the cul-de-sac, there's a catch basin to the north and a culvert crossing that drains the existing lands across through the culvert and drains towards the CN rail, like it follows the existing topography. So if the cul-de-sac were to be removed, then the boulevard would be finished by sodding, and if that section of road would continue to be rural, then it would be finished with ditches that would convey drainage from the road and the boulevard into the existing catch basins and through the existing culvert. But that's what typically could be done, but again, that's a detailed design element that would be subject to city approval through the plan of registration prior to construction.
The second last comments from Ms. Marshall, I think. On Forest Hill Drive East, the fence that is there, now maybe I haven't made good notes on this one. The fence that is at the end of the walkway now, that was part of this covenant that many people have mentioned, that of course would have to come down and it would be replaced to provide the same benefit from the new acoustic fence and berm that has to be established. But in any case, the creation of the block for the walkway, the city wants us to do that. I personally think it's good planning to do that, to connect, to create an extension through of that walkway block that already exists. This is something that, as I say, the city would like to see. I would like to see it. And the fence that goes across it will be replaced by the new acoustic fencing, which should be better, newer, and so on. It will do the job, and you'll have a new fence with protection it'll bring in terms of the acoustics. So I'm not sure whether I interpreted that comment correctly. And then the final one, Ms. Long, talking, I think you mentioned the island. The 6 lots are in the center of the subdivision design. The issue is, if that is left, who looks after it? Who owns it? The city has asked for, requires parkland. We have provided what's necessary. If you think of some of these entrance features at subdivisions that seem to be stranded children at the end of a development, these things often become maintenance headaches. This is a big chunk of property in the middle of this design to not create lots on. And again, I come back to the questions of who owns it? I doubt the city wants to take it on. Who's going to maintain it? So it's an issue. It's probably, in my mind, best created as, or its future is best as lots, I think. And then the trees along the back of lots 36 to 41, these are the large fir trees. Without looking at the tree preservation plan, I don't know if any of those are identified as one of the, or as some of the 27 that have to come down. But again, the trees are only going to come down if they're diseased and a hazard and so on. They're not on a proposed road allowance, so that can't be the reason if they were slated to come down. I just don't know, but I know I can visualize the stand of trees you're talking about, and quite lovely. And I don't see any reason other than if there's something specific in that tree preservation plan that indicates that there's a need, a reason for them to come down in terms of their condition. I don't see that they're going to come down. But then Nancy, you want to speak to grading and so on along those too?
So if we're referring to potential
stretch,
trees that would be potentially like hugging the limit of property behind those lots, the way that they develop the grading design would work through the development is really that we can only change grades within the development itself. So any kind of grading any kind of existing grades that would match up to the perimeter where the existing dwellings would be, wouldn't physically be changed because of needing to match at the property line. And furthermore, through development, there is a benefit to maintaining as many trees as possible, especially in people's backyards, because it's preferable all around.
And I'll just check with staff that many of these details can be answered during the process by city staff, particularly the planner on record. You can keep up to date with what's happening on the dash or by speaking to Ms. Lambert as time goes by. Since this is the public meeting, staff are now going to take all the information, process it, and you can imagine some things will change. To what extent, we don't know now. So I'm now going to thank you and bring it back to the committee. Councillor Turner.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. I have a question. I think it's for the city staff, but it was concerning a gentleman who asked a question about his liability for his basement if there was blasting, and it would disrupt the flow of water and he would have flooding in the future. I'm wondering how long the city's liability would be for that, if it would be a year, 2 years, or if we would have liability if it was caused by blasting.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. I don't actually know the answer to that question since it's not the city that regulates the blasting, the developer does. We can definitely get more information on that and be able to respond back to that in the comprehensive report.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's a tough one. And acoustic fences, no one may know this answer at this point, but I was just curious. You said there's new acoustic fences. Is it made up of a different property? Is it made up of a different composition? And that makes it a better acoustic fence than what there's currently there?
Do you want to talk to the engineering? Or can we really...
The type of acoustic fence? I don't know what's there now.
The fencing that's there now is old. I'm going to guess 20, 25, maybe 30 years old. I don't know. Like many things in engineering, the standards have changed, and I'm not an engineer, but I venture to say perhaps are better. And it will be a new fence. It will be as specified by the noise consultant, based on the impacts that they do as part of their reviews of both, well, the airport noise as well was something that was looked at, but basically the train noise and road noise. Yeah.
So the,
You turned it.
yeah, I guess just as a basic understanding, it'll be a new fence. So that part we understand relative to the old fence. The type of fence, there's various types of fence that need to meet the acoustic requirement. I'm not an acoustic engineer, but it has to do with the density of the materials, and so there's different types of acoustic fences that meet the design requirements.
Okay, I was just curious, but thank you. I appreciate that.
And I think we should clarify, you're speaking about the new fence that will be in the new subdivision.
The new fence would be the one, yeah, within the new subdivision between the southern lots and the CN rail.
Yes, thank you.
And along Bay Ridge.
Thank you.
Councillor Neal?
Thank you. I believe my question is probably to staff, if I might. In recognizing the standards of most subdivision plans that have come before us now, it seems to me that we don't build today to rural road standards. Is that accurate? So we'll have curb and gutters, and we'll also have usually sidewalks on at least one side of the street. Is that accurate? And are we following that process with the new subdivision that's being proposed?
Ms. Lambert?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, it's my understanding that the proposed development, as Ms. Dion has indicated, would follow the curb and gutter design. There have been developments in the recent past, for example, in Westbrook, which is within the urban boundary, but has somewhat of a rural character, and it's been developed in that fashion to have some ditching as well. It varies in terms of the landscape, the character of the neighborhood, but for the most part, under current standards, we're developing to a curb and gutter system with sidewalks on at least one side of the street.
Thank you very much. There was a method to my madness. That was a bit of a rhetorical question. If we do end up proposing turning a cul-de-sac into a grid road, wouldn't it be sensible for it not to be to rural standards? Wouldn't it be sensible, if we're going to do that, if we have to do that, that there's curbs and gutters and a sidewalk on one side of that street for safety reasons as well. I'm just wondering, and if that's required, can that be done on the developer's dime?
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. That's, we don't have the authority necessarily to have the developer go into a previous subdivision and upgrade the standard that's within that subdivision. That being said, through the detailed engineering design and looking at the stormwater flows and other things, going from a semi-urban cross-section into an urban cross-section, they're gonna have to look at the stormwater, the water flows, and how those are gonna work together, where what is the cul-de-sac now would become a through street. So there's details of that engineering that definitely would come through the final design process that we don't have today, but we can clarify some of those questions with our engineering group and bring that back.
I'd appreciate that, because I understand in the 1980s when this road was this subdivision was initially done, it was done to kind of rural townships standards, but today we're developing subdivisions in a more suburban with greater pedestrian and greater drainage through curbs. And I would hate to see it become this orphaned rural road that still is dependent on a ditch when in fact it's a grid road serving a newer subdivision. So, thank you.
And Councillor Osanek.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just some final comments as then staff and Ms. Riley, they go forward with tonight's comments towards then the comprehensive report and the recommendation. So I think everyone heard in this room from the residents how important it is to maintain as many trees as possible in the backyards, in the stormwater management pond area. The tree preservation plan, I have the link. I can send it to anybody who wants it. It looks like you do have like the Norwegian spruces and other important, there's black walnut trees in there preserved, and that's great. There will be trees taken down because there's a lot of white ash trees in that area, and so when we see trees coming down, it's going to be mostly, I think, the white ash by quickly looking through this 67-page report, and with the emerald ash borer, that's what's happening to all the ash trees anyway. But another important point I think we heard tonight too, if there's any way to still reduce the density slightly to make it more in keeping with what's on Forest Hill Drive East. In Forest Hill Drive East, there's 26 homes, and here we have 45 homes. But if we could, reduce the number of homes going on the south side along the railway track, that would make it more balanced, like we heard the comments from Mrs. Roberts and from Ms. Marshall tonight, make it more balanced in keeping with the existing neighborhood. And that might preserve more trees even still along the railway tracks that will help with all the acoustic mitigation from the train tracks, as well as also pointing out that we have train whistles and bells on both sides of Forest Hill at the crossing of Collins Bay Road and in front of Frontenac Public Secondary School. So there are lots of noise coming from the tracks rather than just the trains going by, all the bells and whistles too. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from the committee? Thank you. With that, sorry, Ms. Lambert.
Just a quick word about our DASH system. All of the documents that the applicants provided in support of the zoning bylaw amendment application and draft plan of subdivision application are available for viewing on the DASH system, Development and Services Hub. It's accessed through the city's website. If you search by address of this application, which is 655 Graceland Avenue, you can access all of those documents under Related Documents tab within the record. I have assisted a few residents over the phone in accessing the documents on DASH. I would be happy to receive calls from other residents to walk you through that process as well. My extension number is 2176 with the city. Anybody can contact me and I'd be more than happy to assist.
That's great. Thank you very much. And with that, I'm going to close this public meeting. Thank you very much for your presentation and your answers. And thank you all very much for your comments. We do have a second public meeting this evening, and the second public meeting that I'm opening is an application for zoning bylaw amendment 70 Montreal Street, and we will have a presentation from the applicant, Marlene Young.
Well, I am the owner of 70 Montreal Street.
It probably would be better if you could come to the microphones and then you can, will those work?
Yeah, I just,
Okay.
I need this extra help to hear.
Okay. I'll leave it to the committee. We'll stay where you are.
Yes,
Yep,
okay,
there we go.
I think I can twist and see. Yes, I have been the owner of this since about 2001, I believe, something like that. And I have put this property up for sale. The first people who made an offer and was accepted, and they had all the conditions met, except that they could not get financing because one of the units, the ground floor, is zone commercial. Now, in 2002, I had asked the City of Kingston that I could change the use of that unit because it was commercial at that time, but it's not a very good commercial unit. It's much better as a residential unit. And at that time, I did have the council approve that. So all these years, since 2002, I have thought that it was perfectly all right to rent it as a resident instead of commercial. Just to find that when I'm now selling it, I cannot do that, or the buyer cannot do that. And the banks are not very happy to fund anything that has a commercial component to it. So now I have a new potential buyer, who is Jonathan, who is very anxious to buy this, but he has the same problem. He cannot get financing if it's zoned commercial. And I think that in the overall plan of the city, it's not a very good commercial unit. There's no, there's only meters there that you can park. There's a lot of walk-by people, but not people that are anxious to get to Princess Street, not to do any commercial business at that place. So I think that in the overall plan, it's not a good commercial unit. Other than that, I guess that's all I can really say about it. I do want to sell it, and Jonathan does want to buy it, but unless it's changed, he can't do that. And I would have to change it back to a commercial use, and it's very difficult to get a commercial renter in that space. Very difficult. So.
Thank you. Thanks. We'll continue on. I'll ask our staff to report on any comments that have been received.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Notice was provided in accordance with the Planning Act for the public meeting with signs posted on the property and notices sent to 52 properties within 120 meters of the property. And we received one email that's in the addendum to the committee's package in support of the application. And just to clarify, the permission in the zoning is for a mixed commercial and residential use with commercial required on the ground floor, and the permission being sought is to establish a residential permission on the ground floor.
Great, thank you. Councillor Neal.
Yes, thank you. And I want to thank the proponent for explaining what the compelling reason is for seeking this, this zoning change. I often am reluctant to willingly process a recommendation at the minutes after we have a public meeting, because that sometimes defeats the purpose of a public meeting. But seeing as there were no comments raised by the immediate neighbors, is my understanding from the planner's comments. So I don't think there's an issue there. So the one planning aspect that gave me some pause was the fact that it will be 3 residential units with only 1 parking space. Could you comment on that, or how that has, because it's 3 residential units now. How is the parking accommodated at that location?
Okay. I make it very clear when I advertise that there is no parking. And I have had no trouble renting it with no parking. People sometimes can find alternative parking, and they can park in the city parking lot behind the building at night. But you have to be careful about the signs, because you have to move your car. And I warn them about that as well. But usually they're young people. They're either students or they work in fast food. And so they don't have cars, mostly, you know. And so I have been living there the last 4 years, and I use the parking spot. And the other 2 units are considered bachelor units. So there's usually only 1 person in there. And as I say, the parking has not been an issue. I think if people who are potential renters know that, then the ones that have cars and need parking don't answer. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I know the location well. I seem to remember losing a pair of shoes when that shoe repair place closed.
That's
20 years ago.
I think so.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Other questions from the committee? And I'll now open to members of the public. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak? Seeing none, I will thank you all very much and close this public meeting.
Okay.
And we will continue on. Thank you. I'm now going to open the regular Planning Committee meeting, call the meeting to order, and ask for approval of the agenda with the addeds. Councillor McLaren, seconded by Councillor Osanek. All those in favor? Thank you, that's carried. And minutes of the meeting held on March 23rd, moved by Councillor Neal, seconded by Councillor McLaren. Questions? All those in favor? And that's carried. Yes, that was the unusual meeting. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? No delegations, briefings, and our first order of business is 70 Montreal Street. And we do have a recommendation for this one tonight. So if someone would move by Councillor Neal, seconded by Councillor Turner. Any comments? All those in favor? Thank you, and that's carried. So 70 Montreal Street just carried. Thank you. And I'm now going to move to 271, 273 Earl Street, zoning bylaw amendment to create a apartment building. And we do have a staff recommendation. Can I have a mover and seconder? Moved by Councillor Turner, seconded by Councillor Osanek. Comments? I will call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. That carries. We have no motions, notices of motion, no other business. There was correspondence in the addendum. Next meeting, April 20th, 6:30. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Turner, seconded by Councillor Neal. All those in favor? Thank you. Thanks very much, everybody.